We're joined by Dr. Paul Krautmann, who is a candidate for U.S. Senate on the Democratic side. And so, Paul, you ran a couple years ago for U.S. Senate in the Democratic primary against Senator Shaheen.
Yes.
And now here you are again running against Maggie Hassan. It seems like U.S. Senate is a pretty high post to be aiming for, kind of right out of the gate as a candidate. What leads you to shoot for a Senate spot and makes you think that voters would say, okay, I've got a sitting U.S. senator, but I like this guy?
Well, that's a good question, Bill. You know, I often say that on a personal level, if you had been at our dinner table over the last 40 years with my children, they would have heard a lot. And I think my wife finally gave up 2 years ago and said, well, what the heck are you going to do about it? And I said, well, I guess with a friend of mine, we said, well, let's just primary these two people. So, Senator Shaheen 2 years ago and Congresswoman Custer 2 years ago. And so we just divvied it up and said, let's go ahead and do it. And of course, that was COVID. So we got some traction. Of course we did. This is a small state. Only in New Hampshire can somebody do this. So that's basically it. I'm just, I just feel like the years that I've been writing letters to the newspaper and protesting war and all of this stuff, I just think that why not just bring this stuff out against somebody like Senator Hassan? I have nothing against her personally, but I just, there are some topics some issues that I just wish that she and Senator Shaheen or any number of people would talk about, but they never do. One of which, of course, is the Pentagon budget. And so that's kind of where we started. I'm a retired colonel in the U.S. Army. I served in, I was deployed to Iraq in 2004. So what is that, 18 years ago? It was about this time last year that I was kind of gearing up to, with some of my friends, to go to Iraq. And so anyway, it's kind of like, I want to just bring some of this stuff out. I don't feel, well, go ahead. I'm going to stop there.
Okay. So let's go into a few of the issues that are on people's minds this election, and some that are on your mind. And we definitely will get to Pentagon spending and war and all that stuff that you spend your Saturday mornings on the Common talking with people about. But one of the things that is particularly acute in people's minds right now is inflation. So as a U.S. senator, should you win, what would you do to try to bring down prices on everyday necessities?
Bill, that question I really haven't thought too much about, because I think that just about everything that's going on is probably a little bit of a cause of inflation. I think when we talk about a minimum wage and raising the minimum wage, that's gonna make people put their prices up. And like at the restaurant, the cost is going to go up. So I don't know that there's any way to get around that as we do things to make the plight of the ordinary citizen better, like doing the raising the minimum wage. The other thing that I haven't heard a whole thing about, and I try to read a little bit on Deutsche Welle, which is a website out of Germany, is the other countries are undergoing inflation also, and it's an issue with them. It's kind of like every country is going through this. It's not just the United States that has this issue going on. So, as a U.S. senator, I just don't I don't know what we would do about it. What can be done about it?
Okay, so I guess let's kind of get into your main platform plank, I guess. And in your last campaign, you spoke a lot about it.
Yes.
And that is focusing on war and war spending.
Right.
So one aspect that I'm wondering of your thoughts on our involvement in Afghanistan had been our longest running active war action until that concluded under President Biden. So we are, if not totally, at least in theory, out of there militarily. And there were critics who said, you can't leave, it'll all fall apart. They'll be right back where they were. Others said, we can't just stay there forever. Costing lives, costing money. So we're out. How's that going?
From my standpoint,
how do you think things are going since we finally did it?
It's one of the things one of the few things I would say that I agreed with President Biden about. And I disagreed with Senator Shaheen, who kind of stood up last year and said, oh my goodness, we can't leave Afghanistan. Well, when was the correct time going to be? And so I feel for this is kind of like Vietnam. We left a lot of supporting locals who supported us, and we left a lot of those people behind, and I'm sure that many of them are dead now. But I just don't think that after 20 plus years of Afghanistan, think we were going to make anything better. And by leaving people there, it just left our people vulnerable to getting shot at. One of my kids was a helicopter pilot in Afghanistan in 2010 or so, 10, 11, something like that. And he kind of felt like, what are we doing there? And this was a long time ago. He said that when he came back. He said, I don't see any reason why we should be fiddling around there. And and if you've ever read the book that was kind of an expose of the Afghanistan thing, it was kind of like the Pentagon Papers was in over Vietnam. You'll find that we were the generals that were lying to us the whole time. The politicians were lying to us the whole time. The thing wasn't going well. It never was going to go well, and that really influenced me. I read that a couple of years ago when it came out, and that really influenced me when Biden said, "Okay, it's time to leave." I said, "Yep, darn right, it's time to leave."
Do you feel the same way about Iraq? Are there any different dynamics in the Middle East that would make that a different case? Or
No, I think Iraq, when I was there early on, I think it was called OIF2, Operation Iraqi Freedom 2. This was like the beginning of the second year that we were in Iraq. And I recall, now I was a dental officer. Admittedly, I did carry a handgun, but I certainly didn't go out getting shot at, even though we were mortared every day at the place where I was. I talked to various people at the chow hall every day, and this most of the young people that I talked to, junior officers, were sitting, saying, "What are we doing here?" And this is a long time ago. Again, only the second year that we were there. The morale among the people that I talked to, and this was just random, going to the chow hall and sitting down with people. The morale over that war was terrible. I thought, again, my opinion from talking to people. So I think we've just kind of messed up that whole area, and it's just too bad. And a lot of people were killed, and of course, we've created a lot of refugees throughout from that area, and all of those people, very, very, very few of them came to the United States. They've all been absorbed in places like France and Germany and the Scandinavian countries. So it's too bad that it's too bad that we got mired down in these wars. And the fact is, Bill, and I think I wrote a letter to the newspaper about this. The reporting on those wars was never about the devastation that was going on, and yet when we get involved with the Ukraine thing, we're kind of propagandized over, look at all this devastation, look at all these people that are upset, look at all these people who have to leave. Look at the pictures of all the dead people there. Well, we've done the same thing in Iraq and Afghanistan, but we were never shown here on TV all of that devastation that we caused. And I think, I don't know, I have to admit I'm anti-war, and I just don't want to see people getting killed, and at the behest of the United States of America, especially. Whoops, I can't hear you.
Sorry about that. I had muted myself so we could hear you. So, what goes along with ending these wars is you would like to drastically cut defense spending.
Yes.
I think in half, maybe.
Well, I think that, everything's a compromise, right? So why not start with something pretty drastic and go from there?
Right. So does that include the VA? That's part of the defense spending.
The VA, isn't that a good one? Of course I wouldn't cut the VA. What I also kind of rail about is why we can't take care of our veterans. I mean, we get the Wounded Warrior Project, we get all of these solicitations in the mail, and it sounds like we're not taking care of our wounded warriors, our wounded people. So maybe that's a good place to put a little bit of this money or maybe it's a good place to put more money. The other thing that I think we're being pelted by these people who want to do away with public education. I mean, it looks to me like there's a segment of the political spectrum that wants to dumb us down, and I think that as a matter of fact, we ought to be putting more money toward education and making our people a little bit smarter and better, more intelligent voters. I think that we could. I think we should have. I think it's an embarrassment that we don't have universal health care, and so somewhere along the line we can put money towards something like that. I spoke with a young guy the other day over in Manchester who's from England. And he's been in the United States for about 6 years, I think he said. And he said, living in this country is just really crazy when you think about all of the people who go into huge debt over their medical, their illness or their medical problems. And he said, that just doesn't happen in England. It doesn't happen. And I said, well, I was in Germany for 4 years, a long time ago during the Cold War in the 70s. And it doesn't happen in Germany that people become destitute over their medical issues. So that's another place where we should be putting money and, or at least talking about it. I mean, that's one of the things that our people in our representatives in New Hampshire, you never hear them talking about universal health care. Senator Hassan and Senator Shaheen both ran ads, and Senator Hassan's running an ad where she's helping people get over their surprise medical bills. And I'm thinking, well, that just wouldn't happen if we had some form of government health care.
Well, we'll get to talk a little bit more about healthcare and education. But I'm still with the reducing the military and stop war, start peace. So that's your kind of your motto. It's how you sign off all your letters. Yes. I believe it's something you had on a sign in Central Square. Yeah. Stop war, start peace. So stopping war sounds great. I think everybody would love that conceptually. But, war isn't a one-sided affair. It kind of takes two to tango, they say.
Yes, I agree.
So what would your approach be to countries that have shown a willingness to invade other countries and expand militarily?
Well, Bill, I'm an idealist. I think it was George Carlin that said the cynic is the person who's lost his idealism. I'm still idealistic about it just seems like people can get together. There's some kind of common ground somewhere in any conflict that the sides should be able to get together and at least talk about it. I think that the fact that the United States, the military-industrial complex, benefits. Raytheon and Boeing and Lockheed Martin are benefiting from this war in Ukraine. I mean, we're sending billions of dollars worth of stuff over there. God knows how they're using it, because I've never thought of the Ukraine army as being huge and being well trained in the art of artillery pieces and Stinger missiles and stuff like that. But it just seems like the United States gets itself in between any of these warring countries, and then all of a sudden we're sending stuff there to keep these wars going. that's I'm sounding like a politician because I'm not answering your question, but this is it just seems like a never-ending cycle of war, of sending arms to kill people and displace ordinary citizens, and it just seems like it seems like again idealistically speaking, we haven't tried to start peace. Getting back to Dennis Kucinich some years ago when he said we should have a Department of Peace. It's just changing the whole thinking.
Okay. So what would you do in the case of a place like the Ukraine, or stepping in to protect, say, Taiwan? I mean, what would the approach be if you see that, you know, another neighboring country has their eyes on taking over?
Well, it just seems like from the things that I've read that this Ukraine thing in particular could have been negotiated. There was some give and take that could have happened a long time ago, this time last year or something, and it just seems like nobody ever made the effort to do it. About Taiwan, I don't think that China has. Why does China want to get in, take do away with the? I don't see that China has any interest in doing anything about Taiwan. Why would they do that? It just doesn't make any sense. It seems like another area where we might be just pushing a little bit too hard to actually get something started.
Okay, so I know we're covering a lot of this kind of foreign policy stuff, starting out partly because it is jumping off of one of your key focuses. So just before we leave foreign policy, so there are people running for this same Senate seat who would have the U.S. drop nearly all foreign relations, military, diplomacy, non-economic partnerships, and just be willing to trade with others if that happens, but otherwise become fairly isolationist. What are your thoughts on agreements and foreign relations?
Well, again, I think one of the, maybe the only thing that I agreed with President Trump about was his dissing of NATO. Now, what is that? 4 years ago, 5 years, 6 years ago now. And for example, when I was in Germany in the 70s, when I think the United States had something like 300,000 military in the West Germany. One could see why Germany could get away with, and probably the other countries too, could get away with having a social system that benefited all the citizens, because those countries weren't paying for a huge military like we have in the United States. And so when Trump said something like, maybe they should be paying, those NATO countries should be paying more, I said, well, I think maybe they should. If we're going to have NATO, if we're going to have all of these countries armed to the teeth, then Germany and France and Spain, and they should all be paying more. I don't know that they are now, but I think that if I could, I would probably go on the side of being in isolation. Yeah, and letting these other countries kind of take care of these things. I've often said, maybe a little bit skeptically, let Norway take care of it, for Pete's sake. Let's let them take care of Ukraine, or let them take care of Syria or something. Why should we do this all the time?
All right, thank you, Paul. Oh, yeah. Are you still going?
Yeah, sure, Hunter.
All right. So yeah, another topic on the minds of many voters currently is regarding abortion rights. And so what would you say is the federal government's role? And in light of the Supreme Court's recent ruling, as a senator, should you win, what steps would or could you take to get there?
Well, I supported women's rights and access to abortion. One of the things that I was talking with somebody about a couple of weeks ago was the people who are pro-life. What in the world? What's going to happen to all these babies and these young mothers who have these babies? What's going to happen to these individuals when they're not, when the woman doesn't have an abortion? Are the pro-life people willing to make the social system such that somebody pays for these babies' health care and the mother's health care? And are we going to pay? Is somebody going to pay for the little ones' education as they get older? I mean, what's where are we going with that? What would I do? On the other hand, one of Obama's big issues when he became president was to codify abortion rights, and then he never did do it. So that horse left the barn quite a while ago, and I don't know what's going to happen with it in the future. It's certainly a dire situation for a number of young and poor women when they get into the fix of being pregnant and have to try to find a place to have an abortion so that they can go on with their lives.
And you touched on this next topic earlier in the interview, but so you mentioned that you support universal healthcare. But on the other hand, healthcare is among our country's largest sectors, employing millions, including many who would lose their jobs under universal healthcare. And how do you think we should go about that transition?
Well, let's see. Let me see here. When was Senator Shaheen first running for the Senate? She's 6 and 6 and 12, 14 years ago. There was a physician who was running in the primary against her. And I was at an event where this fellow was speaking. I think he's still at Dartmouth. I'm not sure, but he was running for the US Senate, like I said, in the primary. And somebody asked him, well, what in the world would happen if we had something like universal health care? What would all those executives, with MetLife and Blue Cross Blue Shield, what in the world would happen? They would lose their jobs. And he said, they're smart people, they can get another job. And I thought, that's right. There are a lot of these, we just had, again, it's just a different way of thinking about things that we just don't try. And that's why that's why I'm running. I'm frustrated with the fact that we don't try things. And universal health care, my goodness, Canada has it, England has it, Germany has it, Norway, Sweden, they all have it. Okay, people say, well, my goodness, there's going to be, if we have that, there's going to be waiting lists and this and that. And I was just talking to somebody the other day, and this fellow has to have some kind of open heart surgery. Well, he can't have it for 3 months because there's a waiting list. Well, there are waiting lists. My wife is going through certain medical issues now, and she's on a waiting list. So waiting list shouldn't be a deterrent to talking about universal health care. And again, we're smart people. We're the smartest country, we're the richest country in the world. If we can't look at Canada and England and Germany and say, and pick out the reasons why their system is not working and make it better, then we're not as smart as we think we are.
Yeah, and how about immigration? What would you say your stance is on immigration or border security or the DACA?
What is the DACA? What you call it? Well, obviously, building the wall, I think is an expensive proposition. There are still those who say that's what we ought to do. There again, we should have some better system to help these people who are legitimate, immigrants. There has to be a better system than having them live in these border camps, having all this disease. I mean, I think probably we created more COVID in those people living in those camps than we would have if we just tried to vaccinate them and let them come into this country. It's a big issue, and I think as we go along, I don't have an answer to it, but again, we are smart people, and we should get together and stop kicking the can down the road, because I think that's essentially what we do. I don't think that Biden in 2 years has made that situation any better than criticizing. We criticized Trump over doing what he did, but I don't think the situation's gotten any better with the Biden administration. I think it's just, we have this tendency in this country that we get involved with foreign policy and just shove aside what's good for the people in this country. And I think that's kind of what Biden. It seems like that's what he's kind of done. He's got involved with the Ukraine and this and that and another thing, and they just kind of ignore immigration, for example.
And if there was any confusion still, I was referring to the deferred action for childhood arrivals.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I'm not well read on that issue, Hunter.
Okay, I think we'll move on to education, which you mentioned, Paul.
Yes. More
public support, perhaps, for public education. Education's become something of a controversial topic this election season. It's leading us to consider the separation of church and state, the teaching of history and other topics that might make some uncomfortable in the classroom. And now the forgiving of student loan debt. Does Congress have a role to play here? And if so, what do you think it is?
I don't know. The fallback on education is always it's a local issue. And to some extent, I agree with that. But the fact, the fact that these people are trying, this concerted effort to tell people that, oh, well, you can you can homeschool your children. You don't have to send them to this raunchy public school. Well, one of my kids is and has been homeschooling his children, and he's doing quite well. The curveball, or the not the curveball, but the straightforward thing about his situation is his wife doesn't work. She stays at home. So she's with their 3 school-age kids all day long, and homeschool works for them. But we just can't keep dumbing our citizens down by passing homeschool your kids or we're going, because we're doing away with public schools. That's just crazy. We have to keep it. And I don't know. We're certainly, it just seems like we're going in the wrong direction with education. That's for sure.
Okay, so what do you think about the student loan forgiveness package that Biden has presented?
Well, I'll tell you, Laurie, I think in some ways, do you remember what's his name that was running, that wanted to give everybody $1,000 a month? Who was that guy? Andrew Yang.
Yeah.
In some ways, I think that this is kind of the same thing. It's kind of like saying, okay, the rich guys lent you all this money, maybe through the government, through Pell Grants or whatever, but the rich people, the banks, the rich people lent all this money out, and to forgive this debt would put a lot of money back into the economy, and the rich people can afford to lose a little bit over that debt. So I'm not one of those people. I had 3 kids. I borrowed the money. I paid it back. So I'm not one of those people who's saying, well, shucks, what are you going to do for me? This is one of those things that I think we all have to kind of suck up and and just say, okay, this is what we're going to do, and let's give the money to the young people, that and let them buy a car, let them buy a house, let them spend the money that they would not have if they still had these crazy debts.
Okay, I'd like to move on to climate change. How can we get from where we are, overwhelmingly dependent on fossil fuels, sometimes to the point where other countries can upset our economy by controlling
the
supply, to where you'd like us to be?
Well, I'm one of these people who have a house that could accommodate solar, and I guess you could say I could afford it. And so we've had solar on our roof for about 10 years, and it works. I think that every new building in this country should have solar. I think it's just one of those. It's a little thing that we can make a big dent in how we produce electricity. It's probably not the ultimate answer, because the sun doesn't shine, the battery technology is not there to save the electricity that one produces. I think that wind, any kind of renewable source is probably the way to go. I heard on NPR, I think it was about a year ago, there was a fellow who from the New York Times that was talking about putting wind farms out on the coast, and he said one of the reasons why we can't do this is we don't even have these ships that would that would be able to do this kind of thing. The wind farms that we have on the coast in the United States, there's only a couple of them, but the infrastructure had to be rented or leased from Europe to make these things happen. Europe and England and all those places have much more wind farms on the coastlines than we do, and I think that those are the kinds of things that we should be, again, we can spend money on to benefit us.
Okay, and my last question is about gun control. What's your stance on gun control?
I think we've legislated gun control. I don't know what further legislation we can do to, that horse has left the barn. There's so many weapons in this country that short of trying to collect them all, I don't know what we can do. One of the things that I've suggested is that we find a reason why we are the most violent people in the world. Why do we kill each other like we do? And so I would suggest that a group of psychologists and psychiatrists and sociologists, without any politicians involved, get together and try to figure out why we are what we are. We're a bunch of nice people, but we just kill each other. We lead the league in killing each other. We kill each other in Chicago. We kill each other in Los Angeles. All too often we go into schools and we kill little kids, and I would like to know why we're like that as a society. As far as gun control, I don't know. I mean, I don't know how we can. Number one, there are a lot of M16s out there, what do you call them, AR-15s. It's a military weapon. I've shot it a number of times when I was in the military. They're crazy dangerous weapons, and they're very, very, very easy to use, and they're accessible. And so I don't know how to not make more of them. I don't know how to make them unaccessible. They're out there, and I don't know the answer to. I would like to know why we just kill each other.
So, Paul, it's we really appreciate you spending the time to let our readers and web viewers get to know you a little bit better and more about your candidacy. Is there anything else that voters should know about your candidacy, or that we haven't touched on that you wanted to talk about and let people know?
Well, there are just a couple of other items that I've talked about, and or I've tried to talk about. One is we always make this big thing, and it's coming up in November. We talk about how the veterans did this, the veterans did that, and this is why the veterans did. This is why we have the right to. I think we ought to have every 2 years when we have federal elections, make Veterans Day and Election Day the same day, and make it a full stop holiday, so that number one, we honor the veterans by voting, and there's no excuse if it's a full stop holiday like yesterday wasn't a full stop, like let's say the 4th of July. No excuse to not vote. darn it. This is a holiday and we're going to honor veterans. We're going to wave the flags and we're going to go crazy with patriotism because this is what we're doing. I have, the more I think about it, I think we ought to have term limits on congressional, on senators and Congress people. I think I know that a lot of people disagree with me on that, but I just think that the seniority system doesn't benefit us. I think it, in particular, when you look at the leadership in Congress now, and I'm looking at myself also, we're old. They're old people. And I'm 74, and I don't have the energy that I had 10 years ago. And I don't think that Pelosi and all those birds, I don't think I just think we ought to, if we don't have term limits, we ought to have age limits. And the same thing with the Supreme Court. If I was a young people, I would be laughing at our leadership. I remember as a child watching President Eisenhower and how he just looked old. He wasn't even old then. He was in his 60s, but he looked old. These people are old, and we ought to have a way to just keep that from happening. I think that this revolving door between retired Congress people and retired military people, who Congress people go back in, they retire, they get unelected, and all of a sudden they're a lobbyist on Capitol Hill. And these military officers, especially the generals, they kind of retire, and then they kind of meander back into being on the board of Raytheon or Lockheed Martin. That's double dipping, huge influence that I think we should. I think we ought to do away with that. For example, the Secretary of Defense is a retired Air Force officer, and his last job before he became Secretary of Defense is he was on the board of Raytheon. For criminy sake, come on, give me a break. I would like to see, and again, this is, you might laugh at this, but I would like to see the people in Congress look like NASCAR drivers, because I want to see who's sponsoring them. I want them to wear logos on their clothes, because I want to know actually who's pulling their strings, instead of they tend to wear a little lapel flag or something. I want to see who's sponsoring these people. It's often said that being on Capitol Hill is legalized bribery, and I think that it's too bad that we have things like what was that issue over money in politics that the Supreme Court said it was okay. Anyway,
Citizens United.
Citizens United. That's just crazy. That oftentimes I tell people, I say, well, what good does it do you to vote? Because you know that these people are only going to do what they're told once they get into Congress. So those are some of the things that I kind of like to throw out there.
Okay.
Well,
as I said, Paul.
Oh, there was one other thing.
Oh,
there was
sure.
one other thing, Bill, and one of my daughters-in-law likes this one. On the 1040 form, politicians often tell us, well, the American people want this, they want that. Well, on the 1040 form, I would like to see a little questionnaire that says, this is what your tax bill is, how do you want it spent? And then have 6 or 8 choices there, like they do with United Way. here, you give them $100. This, how do you want your $100 distributed? Well, if we had a questionnaire on the 1040 form, then the politicians would have a survey every year of millions and millions of people suggesting to Congress, how do you want, this is how I want my money spent. So just another little thing. Never talked about, why don't we do something like that?